Hello everybody, my name is Marcel Zwart. I'm an YAE research professor at the University of Girona in Spain, and I'm working in the Institute of Computational Chemistry and Catalysis. Today we have here Genoveva Marti. She's also a YAE research professor. She's working in the Department of Logic in the University of Barcelona. Welcome to have you here.
Thank you.
You were born in Barcelona.
That's correct.
I've been told that Barcelona, even though it's really a big city, is really just a conglomerate of really small villages. So how do you feel that? And also, which part of Barcelona were you born?
Well, I was born in the very center of Barcelona, in a street called Carrer de la Lluna, the Moon Street. It's very nice. And it's one of those small roads that you have in the Raval area. I have some memories of that because I moved when I was 3 years old to a newer area, to the Eixample. And I was living there until I went to Stanford and to do my PhD. So that for the first 20-something years of my life, I was living in Barcelona.
And you also have some memories still of the Raval, so the first 3 years?
Of the first 3 years, I was very little, but I do remember just one thing. I remember the first time I had the sensation of fear. And I know that it's a real memory. Sometimes you think that you have memories, but actually you see them a little bit in third person, right? I know that it's a real memory because I was at home. My mother went to get something and left me alone for a few minutes. And I know that it's a real memory because the walls look and the curtains look very, very, very tall. So definitely I was a little 3-year-old looking at them. So, and that's all I remember. I don't remember much more of that day. Of course, I was very little.
And of the years after in the Eixample, what kind of memories do you have of that period?
Well, the usual memories that you have with friends, going to school, living with my father, then my mother. My father passed away after a while, and then living with my mother there. I had a kind of a very regular childhood, nothing to write home about.
You don't have any, you're only child, so you don't have any
No, I have a sister, but my sister is 13 years older than me. So the relationship was like a kind of intermediate mother somehow all the time. Because there was a big difference in age between the two of us. Yeah, I'm sure, my parents never hid from me that I was quite a surprise, but a welcome one.
Yeah. So then you went on to study philosophy at the University of Barcelona?
Yes, I did, in my secondary school, I did the regular scientific secondary education. I did math, I did physics, I did chemistry. I always had an inclination towards Latin. At that time, you used to study 2 years of Latin in secondary school. Everybody had that. And I loved it. I really loved it. And so I had a fascination for language right from the beginning. And I continued to study Latin, even though I was doing the math, the chemistry, and so on. So finally, when it was the time to go to university, my first inclination was to do linguistics. But then, quite by accident, the professor that was giving the optional philosophy in the intermediate, in the bridge course between the secondary school and the university, he explained what he was going to do in philosophy, why he thought that philosophy was important, and I thought, oh, well, yeah, I'm going to get philosophy as an option. And I did philosophy, and I did Latin, I did math, and then the philosophy started somehow getting inside my brain, and then I couldn't shake it off. Philosophy is this kind of perverse discipline that is not that you choose it, it kind of chooses you more. And then I realized that I was constantly thinking about philosophy, but observed that actually, eventually, what I specialized in is philosophy of language. So my fascination with language and languages has continued.
But it was so this teacher really introduced you, and so it really was the teacher that made you open up to philosophy. It's not that you, before you already had...
I had a little bit of philosophy in secondary school, because there was 1 year of philosophy, and I liked it, and I liked the logic, and I liked that teacher very much. So probably my choosing philosophy in the bridge course between secondary school and the university, which by the way was history of philosophy, was already a little bit predetermined, even though I consciously didn't realize at the time. Anyway.
And at that time, did you also already had a vision for the future? When you started making the choice to do philosophy, did you think ahead? Like
No.
10 years
No.
after?
No. One thing led to the other, and when then I went on to study philosophy at the university, and there what I liked best were the courses in logic and in philosophy of language. They were the most rigorous and they were the most demanding and serious, and at that time I already decided that I wanted to do philosophy of language. I did a kind of BA thesis, which was on philosophy of language, and was on formal semantics, on Montague semantics. And the person who directed me for this thesis, Professor Daniel Quesada, who's now at the Autónoma, he had just returned from 2 years at Stanford University. And he said, you know, you should go. And then I got a Fulbright, and my idea was to go for 1 year and do a master's degree and come back. And I ended up living 16 years in the US and 4 in the United Kingdom. So, as you see, it was very, very much one thing after another.
And so it's really through the connection with this professor that you really got the connection to Stanford?
I got the connection to Stanford. He put me in touch with John Barways, a logician who had been at Stanford and was doing a new kind of formal semantics with John Perry, which was situation semantics. Barways had returned to Wisconsin, and then he invited me also to go to Wisconsin, but I ended up going to Stanford and doing my PhD there, and that was an extremely happy time of my life. I remember it very, very fondly. I remember also very fondly the time of writing the dissertation. These are times that never come back again in your life, because you can afford being completely monothematic. Just think about one thing day after day, hour after hour. It's your dissertation. Of course, I mean, some people feel the pressure, and some people break under the pressure of the dissertation. It happens to many people that cannot really complete it, and it is a lot of pressure, and at times it's difficult. But I enjoyed it tremendously, because after that's over, then you're teaching, and as you grow older like me, you start having administrative jobs that get thrown at you, and you know that doesn't happen when you just have an advisor that tells you, sit and write, you need to finish this, you know. So that's wonderful. Well, you're closer to that than me.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
But when you went to Stanford, did your family have any doubts, any objections, or were they really supportive from the start? Or?
No, my family were very supportive. I was the first person in my family to go to the university. No, sorry, that's false. My father started medical school, but he was caught by the Spanish Civil War, and he was on the loser side. And when the war finished and he tried to go back to continue his studies in medical school, they actually, he was arrested, he was sent to do the military service in Africa, so he ended up never finishing his degree. And but I was the first person. My sister didn't go to university. You know, my parents were not actually very well-to-do at all, And I was the first person that went to university. I did it in the evening, so working full time during the day and then catching a train and going to the university and so on. So for my family, that was a big important issue. And perhaps they were a little sorry that from all the things in the world, from all the useful things that I could do in this world, the first person that goes to university and decides to do philosophy. I think that is something that perhaps they looked at me and they thought, oh well, but they were supportive, and my mother, of course, it was hard for my mother being a widow, and but they really, I really found a lot of support from my family.
And also in the years that you were in Stanford, also did your mother visit you often?
Yes, yes, she visited very often.
That's really nice.
She visited very often. Yeah, my mother didn't speak a word of English, so she would, in order to handle things with in customs and immigration and so on, she would write things. I would write for her things in a card as they sounded, you know. And so she would read from her card in Spanish. So that was really great. So.
And in Stanford, I've been to Los Angeles. In Los Angeles, more or less Spanish is a second language which you can use nowadays almost everywhere. At that time in Stanford, it was
no.
Like
Northern California is very different from Southern California. Also, Stanford is a campus that is in Palo Alto. Is very isolated from the rest. It's not immersed in a city. At the time, Silicon Valley was not what it is right now, and Palo Alto was not what it is right now. And so you don't get to interact much with people. It was a very cocooned kind of atmosphere. Not at all like would be more in UCLA, where you are like, probably you live in Santa Monica or something like that. Yeah.
Afterwards, you went to Seattle.
Yes.
Was it difficult to find this position, or how did it go? Were you contacted? Did you actively search? Or?
In the United States and also Canada, the things are very well organized, and there's a lot of concern about making sure that people have equal opportunity. So it doesn't happen anymore that people are contacted and offered the job. There is a meeting of the American Philosophical Association that happens in December, and this is the meeting for interviews. Shortly before, in October or November, there is a publication, or there used to be, now it's not in paper anymore, of course, there used to be the publication of the jobs for philosophers. And then you would find all the jobs advertised, and you applied for the jobs, and then you got a call from wherever they wanted to interview you. The interview happened at the APA, at the meeting of the American Philosophical Association, and then you would, if the interview went well, you would get a flyback. At that time, the departments had more money, so they would fly, and there was no internet. You couldn't do these things via Skype. So it's not that they had more money, it's just that they had to do it. So they would fly you back, or they would fly back, say, 3 people. And then you would give a talk, give a presentation, interact with the students, spend a day or 2 there, and then if everything went fine, you got an offer. And that's what happened to me in Seattle, at the University of Washington in Seattle.
Did you find that you had any disadvantage or advantage that you were a female? Because I'm not sure in your field how.
You mean in Seattle or in general?
Yes, in Seattle. Well, first in Seattle.
In Seattle, no, I was the only woman in the department though, and an assistant professor. So, but my colleagues in general, I felt very well treated, very well welcomed. And I immediately, there was in particular one or 2 colleagues, Mark Cohen and Larry Bonjour, the epistemologist, and his wife, and we immediately got into also having a little bit of a personal relationship with them. And no, I didn't feel specifically any form of or anything that I could perceive at that time as a form of discrimination for being a woman.
And afterwards you went to Riverside?
Afterwards, I got an offer from Riverside, and then I moved to Riverside, yes. And there I was for 7 years with, I think, 7 or 8, with a parenthesis of a sabbatical that I spent here in Barcelona. Yeah. And
so you've been to 3 different places in the United States. How would you compare those 3 places?
How would I compare the 3 places? Well, one thing that is very curious is observe that I have been moving in the United States. I moved up and down the West Coast,
Yes.
which is very interesting. So the places are different, and mostly my position in the places was entirely different. I was a student at Stanford. That was a wonderful time. I had 3 wonderful years also in Seattle. I loved the city. Many times I think I shouldn't have moved. It's still, when I go there, it still feels like home. The light, the air, the city. It's a really lovely, beautiful town with Mount Rainier there. So I had a great time. It was just 3 years, and it was 3 years in which I was an assistant professor. I was trying to publish at the beginning, having difficulties. Just think of things. I wonder if things are going to work. Things of that nature. Then I got the job in the offer in Riverside. I moved to Riverside because Riverside was at the time a very, very small department that had to grow, and they hired a bunch of very young people. So there was a lot of activity, a lot of interaction. When Seattle and Riverside were completely different, because Seattle was very top heavy. It was full professors and me, the little kid, the new kid on the block, the assistant professor. And Riverside was the country, so there was a lot of activity, and there was a person there who was still there, Howard Westing. Howie was a visiting professor at Stanford the first year that I was there, and I took a seminar and a course with him at Stanford, and actually, in some senses, it was him who shaped my views the most. Because I started reading Kripke, I started reading Naming and Necessity, I started being interested on issues that have to do with modality, and that actually shaped my work later, because I have done philosophy of language, and I have done issues of modal logic, and things that are at the intersection of these things. So, and he was in Riverside. So it was a reason for me to go there, was in some sense because he wanted to build this very active department. And for a while, Riverside was indeed a very active department. And well, then I moved to the London School, to the LSE, but that was a step up somehow, yeah.
Okay, so this was exactly what I was interested about. Why you went, because you liked it in Riverside, so.
I liked it in Riverside, let me put it like that. I liked the university, I hated the town. I really dislike profoundly Southern California, very much. Also, it's not a very good place to live. There's a lot of smog. I had 2 children already at the time, and then the offer, my husband was in Riverside also. He's also a philosopher, and we got tenure, and we didn't get to enjoy tenure because then we got this offer and we moved. But in some senses, professionally was a step up, naturally, because the London School of Economics is a very top institution. Also, the attractive of moving to London, which, as it turns out, it's one of the most unattractive places in the world, as far as I can tell. I really don't like the city. It's hostile. Anyway, but there's a lot going on in London. There's a lot of philosophy going on, and so there was the attractive of that. And we were in London for 4 years until we got the offer from ICREA. And then we thought, I had kind of lost touch with the people here. So I didn't know very well what was going on, philosophically speaking. So we took a leave of absence from the London School of Economics and came to Barcelona. And within 4 months, we had decided that we wanted to stay.
So your husband is also Catalan, or is he?
No, he's American.
What did he think about moving with you to Europe? Was this a big step for him, or was it?
Oh well, for him, the London School of Economics was. It was also a very big step up because it's a very good department and they have a lot of it's a department of logic, philosophy and scientific method. So they have a bunch of very good philosophers of science there, and so for him it was also an important thing.
But personally, was it not a big step? Because I also have some friends, and for them it's really a difficult step to move from the United States to come to Europe. Because for them it's difficult to.
It's difficult for them to move. Well,
on
it
a
wasn't.
Personal level, not on the professional level. They can, yes.
Yeah, but well, for everybody, it's difficult to change country and culture, right? But he didn't have much more of a difficulty than I would find normal. Also, he's the child of a generation of people that moved within the United States a lot. My father-in-law worked for Monsanto, and the companies for a long time in the United States almost had the policy, it's like the Catholic Church, to move the priests around. They had the policy of moving people around. So they lived in St. Louis, they lived in New Jersey, they lived in Georgia, they went back to St. Louis. Then shortly after he went to Rice University to do his undergraduate degree, then his graduate degree at Stanford. So there is a generation of Americans that are very easy to uproot in some way.
Mm-hmm. And then you came back to Barcelona, to your hometown. Did you find anything different? Because you went away before the Olympics and all the cleanup that took it with it.
Yeah.
When you came back, this was all done, and did you find it really a different city, or did you still feel it was it's like home?
I had been here in 1996,
yes.
And that was the time when Barcelona was still the best kept secret in the world. The Olympics had happened, the city was beautiful and nobody knew it. The Ramblas was not full of tourists. It was clean, it was gorgeous, it was fantastic. When I came back, it was a little dirty again. But had things changed? Oh boy, of course things had changed. And mostly I felt like a stranger in my own land. I didn't even know basic vocabulary. When I was here, there were no ATMs, right? You went to the bank and you got your money. And I remember arriving in Barcelona and driving and asking, going to I don't know where it was, but I went to a gas station. One of the first things that I did, and I said, in perfect Catalan, do you have one of those machines that you put a card and then it gives you money? And the man thought, of course, un cajero automático. So I mean, I didn't know how to say it. Things like that, I didn't know it. I didn't know things that were happening, and so yeah, it was interesting, an interesting shock, and it made me. But you know what happened is that, for me coming back to Barcelona, I had the intermediate step of going to England, and it was actually when I arrived in England. It was there that I realized how American I had become, how much I expected things done in a certain way, to work in a certain way, and it was in England when I had the biggest shock, I myself, even more than my husband somehow, because I was surprised of finding myself feeling so American in many ways. So I had these intermediate steps. I confess that I don't feel English at all, so this is not an insult to the English, but it was like Teflon, everything, but I didn't get anything of the culture. So, and neither did my children, which is the interesting thing. So
do your children, which kind of memories do they have of the different places where they have been? Which do they feel the most?
They love it here. My children do love it here. They remember the United States very well. They remember England also. I mean, and they have good memories from all the places. Although moving to England was a little hard. Moving to Spain was hard for my son. But right now, my son is the one that is more connected to the land. He doesn't want to move from Barcelona. They have adjusted perfectly well here, and they like it here. But they are very American. They sound American when they speak. So.
And when you came back, did you find any changes in the way the university was set up?
Oh gosh, no. That's so depressing. I must say that the universities now are much better than they used to be, but I think that this is happening in some ways in spite of the machinery of the universities, not with their support. And they're much better because there's a lot of people that just because have done things, have organized things, have created research groups. When I returned, I got into the Logos group. It was a small group back then. It became much bigger. I think it's probably one of the best, if not the best, research group in philosophy in continental Europe, even Europe in many ways. Although of course you have St. Andrews and so on, but it's an excellent, but that has been created by people. Just because they wanted to do it, just because they realized that they wanted to internationalize, they wanted to publish in good journals. The university continues to be the usual thing where there are many people that continue to try to just get their student in, where you still have, I mean, the process of hiring and promotion is, it's a process that is not conducive to hiring the best people and to promoting the best people. So yeah, that's a very depressing part. I mean, it's so depressing that after you have been for a while, even though as an ICREA, I'm not part of the machinery, I like to participate, I like to collaborate a lot with my colleagues at the university, I like to be in committees, I like to help in any way I can. And it gets depressing. It got at some point so depressing that I really thought that I maybe would want to just go again back to the New World. So when we got an offer from Canada, from the University of Western Ontario, and we said, okay, let's try it, but it's too cold.
Because that was already after you had been here again some 10 years that you got this offer?
These many years, really, from 2013, and I went, you're right, it was last year, yeah. Also, I wonder how much there is, because I've moved so much, I wonder how much I have the little demon of moving inside my body and wanting to go to another place. Like if you told me now, look, I mean, in a couple of years, maybe you can go to Stockholm for 2 years and visit at the university there. And I would say, yes, I would like to. So that's probably something that has happened to me because of moving because of moving so much, or because that's the way I am, I don't know. So.
But then you mentioned that you more or less you noticed that you became American.
In my attitudes, yeah. Very.
After 10 years, when you went back to Canada, did you notice that you had become de-Americanized? That you had become Catalan again, and that's...
Oh, that's very interesting because, you know, it's just Canada is not like the United States at all.
No.
Not just about the good things, yes. Not just about the fact that they don't have weapons and that they don't go around killing one another. Not just about that, but the universities are very different. The way in which they do things in some, I don't know, it's a smaller country. I know that it's very big, but it's a smaller country, and it has a lot of the attitudes of smaller community, I think. So no, I didn't notice anything at all, quite honest. I don't know now what I am. I don't know.
So you also brought a personal object with you. Can you show it to me? What you brought?
Yes, it's a postcard. It's a still life from William Harnett.
Yes.
And this is a postcard that I received a long time ago in 1998, apparently. It's from Ruth Barkan Marcus. Ruth Barkan Marcus died a few years ago, and she was a logician. And she actually has two formulas named after her, the Barkan formulas, that are crucial formulas. Some people think that they are axioms, some people discuss their status in modal logic. And I've worked on these topics, and she was a professor at Yale. And also, I mean, I admire her, and I admired her work, and I read her work. And what happened was that I published a paper, my first paper. And shortly after it was published, the paper was called Aboundness and Substitutivity. Shortly after it was published, I got this letter from Ruth Barkan Marcus. And she said that she had read my paper and enjoyed it very much, and she had said some things that were relevant. Curiously, none of my teachers ever thought about telling me that I should read Ruth Barkan Marcus's work, and that is the being a woman issue. I mean, she was, towards the end of her life, she was really almost bitter about the fact that she thought that she had never gotten the recognition that she deserved. I proposed her for the Schock Prize, which is a very important prize in logic, and she didn't get it. And some other man that, well, I mean, I don't think he was so deserving, got it. And things like that happened in her life. In spite of that, she was, she wasn't very nice, you know, was a little bit cranky and so on. But I admired her, and so I got these letters from her, and she sent me her papers, and I started reading them, and we started corresponding shortly after by email and so on. But I brought this postcard because I think that the postcard is extremely funny, because I had sent her a new paper, and she says, Dear Genoveva, it was a pleasure to see you in Riverside. That's the first time we met in person. Good luck in your new job. Do keep sending me what you write. All best with you. Ruth, in brackets, Barkan Marcus. And then there is a PS. There is a typo on page 279. You need to insert the conditional after inserting t equals t prime. It was so down to business. And that defined her. And so this is a person that, she was not my teacher, she was a person that I admire, a woman in a field, logic, that is very male dominated and where it's very difficult to succeed. And well, actually philosophy is very male dominated. You would think that being in the humanities it wouldn't be so male dominated, but people say that it's because it's the punching sport of academia. Philosophers, in their alleged pursuit for the truth, think that what they have to try to do is destroy the other person's argument. We just have arguments. We just deal with concepts, and our only way is try to find if something doesn't hold water. And how do you try to do it? By trying to punch it. So it's a very boxing kind of discipline. And anyway, so I just brought it because I think that this is a person that was very important for me.
Were you surprised when the first time you received the letter from her?
The first letter, I was incredibly surprised. Here I am, I'm an assistant professor, nobody knows me. And I get this letter from this very famous person who, you know, I had also heard stories about her not being very nice to people. and being always cranky and so on. And so yes, I was really impressed, and I always treated her like, with as much reverence as I could, because she deserved it, and because I was really impressed that she actually grabbed my paper and read it. I mean, nobody told her to read. I don't know how she got the paper. No, I don't think that anybody told her. I mean, she must have been this kind of person that was scanning the literature to see what she found interesting.
That's nice. Mm-hmm. Quite a recognition of you as well.
Yeah, that was very good, of course. I won't deny that. Yes.
And now that you are here back in Barcelona, how do you look back? What would you say to yourself if you would be able to talk to yourself 30 years ago, when you made the decision to go to Stanford? Would you have done the same again?
Would I do the same again now?
Yes.
I think so. Gosh, it's so complicated, because there are so many things that I would like to do in life. Sometimes I think, when I grow up, I'm going to study nutrition, because I find it very interesting. Have things about nutrition always, or food science or something like that. So, but going back and just having this one shot at doing things, yeah, I probably would do the same thing. I like it. I enjoy it. It's perverse, but I enjoy it. Mm-hmm.
And as a final question, because this is a thing of the Young Academy of Europe, this is your chance to say something to the next generation of scientific leaders. What would be your message to them?
Oh, wow, what a question. What to say that doesn't sound like the already canned thing, but it's probably what everybody will tell you, which is that, do what you want, do what you like. I know that it's difficult in this day and age, because I am convinced that what has made us progress has been just the desire to know, just the desire to understand, just the fun that it is to understand things. And it's a big concern that nowadays it's so difficult to justify that. You have to justify it always by some practical utility. Even philosophers have to do it. We have to explain how, eventually this will have ethical impact in this and that. And if the new generation, if you guys manage to just put your foot down and make sure that, no, we're in it because it's important, we're in it because just the wanting to understand what's happening with the world, with our past, with other people. If you can do that, I think that you guys would do a great service to humanity and to science.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here today, and thank you for having this for this interview.
Thanks.